Hi there, everyone. My name is Mac, and I'm actually a leadership and team building coach, but I work specifically with first time team managers. So, I want to get into the heart of the meat and potatoes of this content today because there is so much that I have to share with you. And I also want to make sure that you are walking away with a couple of actionable steps that you can take depending on where you're at. But before we dive in, I want to give you a little bit of a backstory around how this topic even came to be for Summit this year. So, a couple of months back, Liz, your wonderful Summit host, actually reached out to me to find out if I had any resources for something like this, because what she had noticed is that some of you within her audience were feeling just a little bit down with regards to this transition that you were making in management. And what was so interesting about that, like when she reached out to me, what was so interesting was that, like, literally a few weeks before that, I had seen kind of an uptick in the amount of DMs and emails that I was receiving from first time managers who were actually wondering if they should even stick it out. In fact, somebody literally sent me a DM on Instagram where they said, "Should I do a voluntary demotion? Because I don't know that I'm cut out for this." And so I'm telling you this because I think it's important that you know that, the voice in your head that's telling you you're not cut out for this, or, however you're feeling right now, I want you to know that you're not alone in those feelings. There are plenty of other people that are feeling the exact same way, wondering if management is really for them. They're thinking about it in their head too, right? So I just wanted to let you know that. And that's exactly why Liz and I decided that this should be a topic that we would consider at Summit this year, because so many people are thinking about this in their heads alone, and we don't want you to be alone. We want you to have the resources and tools that you need to make a decision and then move forward. Okay, so that's kind of the backstory of how this this came to be. And like I said, I just really wanted to let you know that you're not alone in those feelings. All right, so like I said, I want to jump right into the content because there's a lot that I want to consider with you. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to switch modes here so that you can just look at the slides and be present and be focused, and also so that I can be present and focused in making sure that I am delivering the best freaking content that I can for you. Okay, so let me just switch modes here for a second and I will be right back with you.
All right, so we are good. You can see my slides, you can hear me. Okay, we're good to go. So here's what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're first going to dive into why you might be at the point where you're feeling like this quote unquote promotion is more of a curse than a blessing. And those were legit words that I heard from a former client of mine before we actually started working together. So I wanted to say it exactly as she would. The next thing we're going to talk about is just the number one question that you should be asking yourself, if that is truly how you feel. And then lastly, we'll talk about what you should do if you find that, no, the role isn't for you. Like, we'll talk about what your next steps could be and what you should do. And also we'll talk about, like, if it turns out that, it is for you and you do want it, what specific practical next steps can you take as you make this pivotal transition in your career? So let's start off with why. Let's start there first, as Simon Sinek so famously coined, because I believe that stripping back the layers and just first diving into why actually provides a greater level of clarity. And, we all know that clarity is power. So after having had the opportunity in the summer to talk to 57 new managers, here are some of the reasons why so many new leaders tend to doubt themselves in this role, and maybe you can relate. So number one, a lot of them mentioned just the norms of what management should be. So some people or some managers actually believe that they should be charismatic, extroverted, poised, excellent communicators. They need to be all of this in order to be a fantastic leader. This is what they truly believe. Or on the flip side, they think that they just have to be managers and not leaders, right? So the role feels like a whole lot of extra when they realize that, wait, I can't just tell people what to do. I got to influence and motivate them too. Like, there's a little bit of a disconnect for the people that go into it thinking that all they have to do is manage resources. Okay, number two, the second reason why a lot of people feel like this is because they're not getting support or feedback from their manager. So many felt as though their managers were too busy, not the best communicators. They were vague when setting expectations, which left them feeling like completely lost and unsupported in their roles. Number three, expecting perfection. So, a lot of managers that I talked to were once high performing individual contributors, as so many of you are. And so, what happens is they get into the role and they kind of expect the same thing. They expect that they are perfect as managers and leaders. Number four, some people cited that they missed aspects of their previous role because now that they're managers, the pressure and the responsibility it falls solely on them. And so, they tend to kind of miss not having that same type of pressure and responsibility like when they were in their IC role. Number five, and this one, the environment or the company is just straight up toxic, which of course makes sense because this entire summit is about exactly that. So, of course, this is an issue. Number six, the team might be in utter chaos. So maybe there's a lot of conflict, there's trust issues, there's respect issues, making it feel like a whole lot of drama all the time, right? The team is just absolutely chaotic. Number seven, there's a challenge when it comes to balancing the two roles, right? Because a lot of times becoming a manager, like I like to say, isn't a light switch moment. You're often having to balance your individual contributor work as well as leading a team at the same time. So just having to balance these two roles can make it feel like just a lot. It can make it feel really, really heavy. And then number eight, finally, overwhelm, right? The overwhelm that just comes with your mind simply burning a lot of calories due to being in a completely new role with new expectations and new responsibilities. Now, all eight of these reasons, like I said, presented itself in the conversations that I was having with these 57 managers. And like I said, maybe you resonate with a few of them, or maybe you resonate with all of them. I don't know. I know for myself, when I first started, I could probably tick off more than half of those. If I'm being honest, more than half of those really led me to feeling like I needed to get the heck out of there and just go back to answering the phones. Now, for me, right, I was fortunate enough that I was blessed with a mentor who I could talk to about how I was feeling at the time. And I remember, for about 6 months into my role, I had reached my breaking point, as we all do when we've had enough, right? And so what I did was I stormed into my mentor's office, who was my boss at the time, and I full on had a meltdown, okay? Like a full on meltdown. And I told him, I was like, listen, this is just not for me. I cannot do this. And he listened to me. And then he calmly looked at me and he was like, I get it, Mac. You're frustrated. But it's simply because you've been looking at this all the wrong way. Yes, your title is manager, but your actual job is to lead. So the only question that you have to ask yourself at this point, Mac, is do you want to be a leader? So I want to pose the same question to you. Do you want it? Do you want to be a leader?
Now, I know I fully said that we would stick to the slides so that we can both be present in this content, but I just wanted to pop on here and really talk to you about what I'm about to say, because I feel like this needs to resonate and you need to see me in order for it to resonate, okay? So here's what I 100% believe, okay? I 100% believe that leadership and management can be learned, okay? There is no such thing to me as not being cut out for it. I know that's the title of this presentation, but I honestly do not believe that there's no such thing as not being cut out for it. Now, is it true that some people just naturally lend to having certain qualities or tendencies where it's easier for them to develop these competencies to be effective? Absolutely. I will absolutely say that. But that doesn't mean that if you want it, that you cannot acquire the skills necessary to be effective. These are learned skills, which means that if you want it, if you truly want it, if it turns out this is what you want to do, then that means you can put the effort forth to develop the competencies and skills required to be effective at it. Because everybody really does have to do it. Even the people that are naturally inclined, who have great interpersonal skills and whatnot, there's still things that they have to learn in order to be highly competent at it. So I wanted to, like I said, really just double click on that because I think that this is an important note as we move forward for you to know, which is that leadership and management is absolutely something that can be learned. And to me, there is no such thing as not being cut out for it. Okay. All right. So let's get back into the slides here. Okay.
All right. So again, I want to just make sure that you know that if you want to, you can absolutely develop the qualities and competencies required to be a great, great leader. So again, the only question you have to be asking yourself if you're at that point where you're questioning whether or not management is for you is, do I want to be in a leadership position? Do I enjoy helping others succeed? Do I want this opportunity to lead a group of people towards something big, maybe bold and audacious? Or do I actually enjoy recognition and being in the spotlight? Now, if you ask yourself those questions and you're like, Mac, after thinking about it, I don't think I want this. And the reason I don't think I want this is because I don't have the temperament to be patient with people, or I don't have the personality to be really interacting with people right now. And also, right now, I have other priorities in my life that just will not allow me to give my time, energy, and emotional effort to this. Then I think it needs to be said, like if you're feeling that way, it needs to be said that that's okay. So the question is like, what do you do, right? If it turns out you don't want this role, it's not for you, what do you do? Well, the first order of business would be to have a candid conversation with your manager. Thank them for having thought of you and for the opportunity to take on more responsibility, but that this specific responsibility is not something that you had envisioned for yourself or even something that you're enjoying, right? Propose other ideas of how you can add value to the team as an individual contributor, or how you might be able to support someone else on the team that might be better suited for the role. And then, of course, reinforce that your decline is not a lack of commitment to the team's success, but it's actually you trying to be truly committed to the success to the team because you want the right person to be at the helm, right? And that that this role is actually critical to the success of the business and that that's what you're committed to. And I have to tell you, like, that type of candor, forethought, and insight is something that any boss would admire. So don't be afraid to speak your truth. There is absolutely nothing wrong with not wanting to be a manager. All right, now let's switch gears here for a moment and talk about the other side of things. What if, after asking yourself those questions and stripping away the fear and the current circumstances, right? What if after you ask yourself those questions, you answer yes, except for one, of course, because one of those answers should have been a resounding no. But if you said yes to everything else and you do want to be a leader and you do want to commit the time, energy, and emotional effort to it, what do you do? Especially if you're still finding yourself questioning if it's for you. Well, again, I would urge you to ask yourself this follow-up question. What is causing me to feel this way? Now, I can tell you that of those 57 managers that I interviewed, that I referred to at the very beginning of this, I was actually able to narrow it down to 4 reasons that just kept coming up over and over and over again in a variety of forms. And maybe by narrowing it down to these 4, it might resonate with you and might help you kind of determine what is really causing you to feel this way. So here are the 4 things that just kept coming up over and over again. So expecting perfection of yourself, a lack of support from your direct manager, team chaos, and the environment is toxic. So let's talk about each one by one. So what if you want to be a leader, but you are just riddled, right, with this idea that everything you do is just not absolutely the way that you want it to be or the way that you envisioned it for yourself? Well, I can tell you this. As a recovering perfectionist myself, I can tell you that while it is always a lot better to have higher expectations for yourself than others have for you, it is also detrimental to your growth to continue to expect perfection from yourself because the truth is that it's a myth. I love this quote here by Elizabeth Gilbert where she says that perfection is unachievable. It's a myth and a trap and a hamster wheel that will run you to death. You see, the way that people love to portray the reality of life or anything really that you're striving for or striving to achieve is that it looks like this, right? They want you to believe that it's as simple as taking a walk down a straight path, or at least people portray it to be that way. When the truth is that for all things in life that's worth it, it usually looks like this. And for you, right, maybe you're coming off an individual contributor role, fresh off being the freaking best at what you do and wondering, like, why the heck aren't things going as dandy as they were when I was an IC? And the truth is, it's because you're going down a completely new path, a new path that requires from you a whole new set of skills, competencies, expectations, and pressures. So it's only to be expected that it's hard. So instead of criticizing yourself for not getting something that is honestly a long growth path, accept that the journey ahead of you is going to be windy, trippy, but doable if you focus on the following things. And I tell my students this all the time. You need to focus on taking small action, expecting big flops, and then planning for your next best move. This is all that you have in your control. And if you narrow it in on those three things, you're more likely to stop criticizing yourself when things don't go exactly the way you want or the way you expected it to. You know, something that I had to really work on, and it's actually still something that I struggle with to this day, is actually acknowledging the in-between efforts. For a lot of us high achievers or perfectionists, it's about the goal for us, right? Like, are we hitting the mark or aren't we? Are we good at this management thing or aren't we? Like, we don't see this small little micro efforts that we make in between that allow us to actually eventually achieve the goal as something that even matters, right? We don't remember that it was the simple act of speaking up in a meeting sometimes that built our assertiveness. So I want you to keep that in mind, right? Keep that in mind. The small in-between efforts, they also matter. And I will be sharing with you a resource at the end of this training that I know will aid in specifically this aspect of things, but I just want you to keep that in mind because the truth is, if you don't acknowledge the small stepping stones that you're taking in between, you will always find yourself depleted or not worthy when there is actually so much evidence to the contrary. Okay, so let's move into the second reason here, which is you're simply not getting the support you need from your manager. Well, first of all, I want to isolate validation from support because sometimes in coaching managers, we actually uncover that what they truly want isn't necessarily support or clarity or direction, which is very essential. What they actually want is a pat on the back, right? A thumbs up to let them know that they're doing a great job. They want their bosses to say, hey, Sandra, you're doing freaking awesome. Now, I would be doing you a great disservice if I neglected to tell you this. Not every manager knows how to give positive reinforcement. And some of them might actually think they're already doing it. Because everyone kind of acknowledges recognition in different ways, right? They might be providing you with reinforcement based on their preferences. And because it's not your language of acknowledgement, you're not seeing it. Or it could be, quite frankly, that they're taking it for granted, right? They might consider you to be stronger, so they may feel like they don't need to reinforce you. Because remember, we always see ourselves differently than the way other people see us. So they might actually be looking at you thinking, this person is strong. You're doing a great job. And they don't feel like they need to reinforce you, so they don't do it. So if it is a matter of validation that you're actually seeking, then that's just simply a matter of having a candid conversation with your direct manager about the type of reinforcement that you need in order to keep going. Now, if what you're actually struggling with is clarity of direction and expectations, then for this type of thing, I need you to know that, again, most managers, including your manager, they just don't know how to do this. right? There's a reason why employees state that one of the things that frustrates them the most about their manager is unclear expectations. This is not something that people just know how to do. And unless your manager has sought out the development that they need themselves in order to be clear, they might not know that they're being unclear. So it is your job to seek out clarity and to seek it out on a consistent basis. And I want you to remember something. Always remember that the quality of your questions will determine the quality of the answers that you actually receive. So asking for more information on a subject that you are not sure about will most likely only give you more information that you probably don't even require to do your job. And more information, like I said, is not what we need for clarity. So if you're in a situation where expectations aren't clear, I want you to really stop and think specifically about what you need and then tailor your question in a way that helps you get that answer. So is it that you require examples? Do you require an opportunity to sit with your manager for an hour to ask more in-depth questions? Do you need a shadow day? Do you require an opportunity to sit with another department just to see how all things come together so that you can fully wrap your arms around the concept? Ask for what you need. One thing that I advise my clients to do on a weekly basis is actually send a weekly recap email to their manager every Thursday afternoon. And what they do is within that email, they recap the week's activities, just a couple of high bullet points, like high level bullet points. And then they also share their intentions for the following week. And I want to encourage you to do the same because the reason I actually have them do this is to make sure that there is consistent alignment between them and their manager, right? And I want the same for you. I want you to make sure that there is consistent alignment between you and your manager in terms of what's going on. That way, if there is actually something that you're doing that you're not sure is in alignment with their needs, then they can catch it and redirect you right away, or at least provide you with the information or support that you need to keep going. Plus, would you not agree that it is nearly impossible for someone to provide you with something if they don't know that you're in need of it? So I would encourage you, right, in your next one-on-one meeting with your direct manager to, again, have candid conversations around what your current struggles are and how they can support you. Because remember, just like it's your job to provide the support, resources, and tools to your team to ensure their success, it's also the responsibility of your manager to provide you with the same set of support systems so that you can be successful as well. But they won't be able to do that unless you make it known. Okay, so let's dive into the next reason. So the next thing that typically, comes up when it comes to managers not necessarily knowing whether or not management is for them is, of course, the environment is toxic. Now, I already know that you're getting a lot of good advice from this summit as it relates to this specific subject. But I do want to put just my own little 2 cents on this topic, just as someone who has operated in a toxic environment for a short period of time in a management role. So for me, personally, I actually stayed in my role because of my team and my boss, even though the company that I worked for was ridiculous. I absolutely loved my boss, who was my mentor and also my sponsor. And I absolutely loved my team, right? And I just didn't want to leave them. I really enjoyed working with them. I just didn't love the environment or the company that I worked for. So one of the things that really helped me was actually focusing my energy on protecting my team, looking out for their interests, developing them so that they had the skills to leave when the time was right for them. And I did my absolute best to be that positive influence up and across the train, across the chain. Sorry, I can't speak. So I want to encourage you, if it's not within, the realm of possibility for you to leave where you're at, and you don't necessarily love the environment, but you do love your team, I want you to also focus on what's actually in your control. Now, I know that that's, again, easier said than actually done. And I say that again as someone that only lasted a couple of years in an environment like that. And I can tell you that it did have, a tremendous psychological impact on me. It's actually something that I still battle with to this day from being in that environment. But what I will say is this. It's been, let's see, 3 years since I've been in that environment. And to this day, my team members and even some who were not on my team reach out to me to thank me for my example, my support, and my dedication. So I tell you this because yes, your situation is sucky, but I want you to know that you can still have an impact in other people's lives if you focus on taking care of those around you, even in an environment that is ruinous to the bone. Okay, there's still positive impact that can be had if you can't get out right away. That's pretty much all I want to say on that subject, because I know that Liz has a wealth of knowledge that's coming to you on this. And so I don't want to dive into that too much. All right. So lastly is just team chaos, right? So maybe you're experiencing respect issues, trust issues, inconsistent performance issues that is just making you feel like you can't do this and that you're just fighting this uphill battle. Well, here's what I want you to know. I want you to know that you can, because the one person who actually has the ability to change things is actually you. Now, here's why most people fail at solving their people problems. It's because they look externally for the answer. I mean, I know I certainly did it, right? When I had a problem with a team member, I would go to trusty Google. I would go to my computer and I would type in things like how to handle a difficult employee, how to lead a team, how to engage employees, how to have a difficult conversation, how to deal with people with low performance, or how to motivate people. Like, Google was literally my crutch in the beginning. And it was bad because it got me in this rut of being a reactionary leader, because what would happen was something would happen and then I would Google how to handle it. So I was constantly like reacting to things instead of being like a proactive leader, which is actually more effective. And so, of course, you know what would happen, right? Google doesn't have the answers of all things. So I would go to Google to deal with sticky situations and find myself not having the answers. And I remember there was this one particular time where I had a really, really tough situation and I went to Google, couldn't find the answer. And so I went to my mentor because I was like, well, I can't find the answer here. So I got to go somewhere to deal with this because I don't know how to deal with this. Like, I'm not equipped to deal with this. So I went to my boss and I explained the situation. And again, he listened. And then he looked at me and said, listen, you're looking in the wrong place. How about we take a pause? Okay, let's take a pause from this situation. There's this great leadership conference I think would be great for you. I think you should go to that. I'll sign you up right now. And he did. He signed me up like instantly. Right there in his office, he signed me up to this great leadership conference. And I was like thinking in my head, yes, he gets it. He gets that my team is a pain in the rear end, and I'll be going to this conference and getting some tips and tricks as to how to handle this situation. Like, I am good to go. And I'm telling you, this is what I was thinking in my head. And then I get to the conference, and I got to tell you guys, it was a rude awakening. Because like literally two talks in, the speaker got up and said something I will never forget. He said, organizations are never limited by their opportunities or their team. They are always limited by their leaders. And I got to tell you, I felt that one hard. Like, I felt it hard. And if I'm being honest, at first I was like, how dare you? How dare you say that? Like, you have no idea how difficult these people are. But then, as he went on to explain more and more in depth, I have to tell you that I began to see the validity and the truth in it. In the book, 21 Laws of Irrefutable Leadership by leadership expert John Maxwell, he actually coined the term the leadership lid. And the leadership lid is one of those principles that has honestly just proven true time and time again. And it's the principle that leadership ability is the lid that determines a person's level of effectiveness. So what this means is that you as a leader are always the lid. You are the highest peak of your team's ability. So let me break that down for you. What this means is that if you are 3 on the effectiveness scale as a manager and leader, that means your team will only ever operate at a 2. And that is because they simply cannot be higher than you. So the question to people problems, team chaos, trust issues, respect issues, performance issues, thankfully starts with you. And I think that's a good thing because while you actually can't control others, you most definitely can control yourself, which means that the changes you're seeking are 100% within your control. You see, when you become more competent at these specific competencies listed here, and yes, there are a lot, but when you become more and more proficient at this, you will see the lid increase. And as a result, your team's effectiveness will go that way as well. Okay, they go hand in hand. Now, at the same conference I went to, I was actually introduced to the concept of a leadership development plan, and I've actually stuck with it since then. So every quarter, I pull it out, reassess, and readjust. And I want to encourage you to do the same thing. Now, I know it might be hard to know where to start specifically, which is why I've actually created a template for you around this personal leadership development plan that you can use to get started. So I'm going to actually pop in here just to talk to you real quickly about this.
So this leadership development plan is really structured to help you make sure that you're focused on the most important competencies required and skill set required in order to feel confident and competent in your role, right? And in a world where people just lack focus, I'm telling you, a plan makes all the difference in the world. So I want to suggest and I highly encourage you to download this template. It is free to do so, and it actually comes with a free instruction video. So you can watch the instruction video first, kind of get a feel for how I used to do it when I was doing it when I was in corporate, and then, you know, use the template to help you kind of like do it according to your vibe, because obviously you're different from me. This is just a shell so that you have an idea of how to do one and then, you know, refer back to it on at least a quarterly basis. And, you know, something else that this leadership development plan does that it really helped me do is to actually acknowledge the small achievements in between, because if you're a high achiever perfectionist like I have been, then you'll know that, you know, we tend to not acknowledge ourselves for the small things in between. And so what this does is it actually forces you to stop, reflect, and really like celebrate yourself for, like I said, those small in between achievements, because you're reaching those small achievements. You're just not stopping to acknowledge them, which is, you know, feeding into why you're not feeling so great about where you're at. So this, like I said, forces you to stop and do that. So what you can do is actually go to, let me switch gears here. You can go to makitaandrews.com/leadership development plan, like you see here on the screen. And then you can just download that for free. It is my gift to you. So I hope that you find it useful and that, you know, you go back to it as often as you need to so that you can see how awesome sauce you are. All right, so that is pretty much it for me. I hope that you found you know, the content that I delivered here today valuable to you, and that you had a couple of actionable steps that you can take as you move forward. And I also hope that you enjoy the rest of the summit. I know that Liz worked really, really hard over the last couple of months just to make sure that she was bringing all the pieces together and finding the best people that she can so that she can help you be your very best. So I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. And of course, you know that you can reach out to me whenever. I should have put a slide here in terms of like where you can find me, but I've pretty much made it easy because it's my name everywhere. So if you want to reach out to me on Instagram, like if Instagram is your thing, I'm over at Makita.Andrews. And then of course, if LinkedIn is your thing, then again, you can find me at Makita Andrews. And of course, my main platform is YouTube. So if you're looking for specific content as a first-time leader, then just go to Makita Andrews and you will see right there I've got a library of content waiting right there for you. Okay. All right. So that's pretty much it for me. I hope you have a great rest of the week, and I will hopefully see you guys in the Facebook Live soon. Bye.